and we'll get started. And if you have any questions, and while the recording is going, what I'll do is I will read them, but read it as if you're asking anonymously, just for the sake of the recording. So, why are we here today? And what are we here to learn? And what are we here to kind of gather and work on? Well, I personally think that meditation has so many different kind of facets and ways of going inwards and ways of trying to not just relax and not just heal, which of course are super important, but also to understand the self and to kind of gather a little bit of insight, personal insight. And I think that working with meditation is an opportunity to really open the self to understanding. So the reason I call this specifically trance meditation is because I like old things very much. And I like to think about very old civilizations like Babylon or Egypt or, working with Mayan civilizations, right? And thinking about the first peoples before we had names of countries and we had, unknown tribes and, Neolithic people and people who are just animists and stuff like that. And animism being, for those who may not be familiar, the idea that there is consciousness and there is basically a life and an awareness in all things that live on this planet, which includes the trees and includes the waters and includes, if you have crystals or if you have even like your Toy Story, your teddy bear from when you were a kid. There's some idea that there's a consciousness there, even if it's kind of in very subtle one. And so I think these very old ideas are very much tied to meditation and to taking that moment for yourself and to see where meditation will take you. And that is why I spend this kind of 1 hour short bite a month to offer us an opportunity to kind of go into that very old practice, which I think is so beautiful and so important. And for me, the work that we're doing specifically has a few separate kind of roots that I pull in. And the first is these are all from my ancestry and why I brought up Norse stuff and also bringing up kind of the other side of my family is this concept of meditation has been talked about often. And in the Norse tradition, this was often called Seder or Sather. And it was actually a magical practice in which you were going into a space to become a seer or to practice a form of, what was considered magic, right? By seeing, telling, and potentially even shaping the future by going into a meditative space, basically holding that space. And so some, might have considered this later to, as things were kind of Christianized, this was considered taboo, but this like the old ways was the idea that you would have, as I always say, which I love, you'd sort of have your uniform, you would have your staff, you would have your kind of dress or your cloak, and you would always have your chair or your throne. And these practitioners would often go into kind of a mantra space. They might be saying incantations, but then they would go into what we would call a trance now or a hypnotic space, and they would just receive what was meant for them. They would be listening for Freya or Odin or really anyone who would come forth. And so I think that that's what's important is that this was like a practice that was a respected practice. The Oracle of Delphi, very similar, right? The Oracle of Delphi would meditate kind of with the volcanic sort of emanations, right? And so some might say that was aiding her. But the idea was that she would invite in a profound listening. And in these old ways, would allow for the divine through that listening. So that is, I think, one of the hearts of this work. The other heart is for those who are repeating folks. You might remember that I also practice Sufism. And so, we've had our Ramadan and our Eid celebrations in this space, and I've always absolutely loved them. They're very dear to my heart. And Sufism, or Tasawwuf, it's originally from the Middle East and is considered mystical Islam. So it's not Islam as you think it is, but it's the very spiritual, mystical expression of that faith. And the idea is that if you've ever seen it, Sufis will train for years and go into a trance where they spin and they dance and they spin around and they spin and spin. And as they spin, they're actually performing a body meditation where the belief is that you are spinning as the planets are spinning. And so you are receiving meditation kind of downloads, but you're also going into the place of no mind and kind of void mind. And through there, you're kind of finding your enlightenment. And so I find that practice to be so sacred. And I think that looking at these two, as well as many other practices, I mean, meditation is so important to Hinduism and Buddhism, and mantra work is so valuable and necessary, and has been in my practice too. I love Shakti mantras. I use them all the time in my personal practice. And this idea that you're clearing and clarifying the self is something that's continued to be passed on and is really at the heart, I think, of kind of the modern way that we look at meditation. And so when I'm calling it in, I'm just inviting us to go back to those old ways. And the last kind of root, the third sort of, the third part of this fork is for those, I did a little bit of mediumship work, and some of that work that is done by mediums and by seers, and this is also for anyone who might read the tarot or the runes, or if you read animal bones, really any kind of reading you may be familiar with or not, and that's okay too. A figure named Edgar Cayce, who is from the 1800s, early 1900s, considered a kind of famous celebrity American clairvoyant. And he believed that the way to achieve readings and to kind of provide information was by channeling his higher self, while for him sometimes asleep or in a trance-like state. And so he would kind of go deeply into, as he called it, his subconscious mind, to explore the dream realm. And he would just speak what he was seeing, and his wife and his friends, they would all record what he was experiencing. And there's been many books about him, and sometimes some may think that he's kind of a fraud and some may not, but I think that the practice of this trance is so at the heart of everything. And especially if you are a seer, or you love to read, read the spirits, read the cards, read anything. This is a practice that I think is fundamental to have in your toolkit, which is the opportunity to just go deep and kind of quiet the self. And I think that's why meditation is kind of making this comeback, and it's like almost corporatized in a way, and not in a bad way. Like, I think it's awesome that people are curious about what is meditation, where is it coming from? This is a way to help us all out. And it's true. It is such a helpful tool for anyone in their toolkit. And that is why I talk about it the way I do. For me, it's also about exploring the many roots that it has, but it's also about honoring those roots in this space while still honoring the self first and taking that time for the self first. So that's really all I have to say about that. I think that even though sometimes I'm sharing kind of the same story in this space, I think that the story is important because it's a reminder that If you want to let the divine in, whatever that means to you, if that's the universal life force, if that's, just the universe, if that is a god, if that's a deity for you. I have the Egyptian pantheon because we were doing the Lion's Gate on Monday. But if you want to work with, ancient deities, if you want to work with your saints or your archangels or your bodhisattvas, work with those people and invite them in when you're going into this quiet space. And if you don't, just work with yourself and just be kind of in this peaceful self. And you might find out things or listen to yourself and hear some revelations or ideas that you might not have even been thinking about. So I think that it'll be super useful. And so the final thing that I'm going to share is what we'll do is we'll start this meditation. It's very short. We're going to end at 8. And then at the end, when I'm going to stop talking, I'm going to count down to 10. And we're going to take just a little bit of quiet time. And if that's where you want to allow a trance-like state, go for it. And if you're like, oh, I'm not sure, just allow quiet time for yourself. And that way you have an opportunity to not just be guided by me, but to really be guided by yourself today. And I think that's always very important. Fabulous. I don't see any questions, so I think that's a good sign. I think we're doing something right. And let's go ahead and start the music, please. Perfect. Thank you. Today we are just working with trance. We're not going to have a theme. So again, allow whatever comes through. Okay. Great work, everyone. Thank you again for being here. Let's begin at the beginning by taking a moment and noticing where our breath is, how our breath is sitting in our chest and our sinuses. And just allowing for the breath to kind of do its natural thing, just do its thing. Now we're going to move one step further by moving together now into a guided breath, and I will guide you. Don't start until I say go. What we're going to do is we're going to breathe in to the count of 9, and then we're going to breathe out to the count of 9. And so what I'll do is I'll guide you as this is happening. Okay. Starting now, breathing in 9. Breathing out 9. Breathing in 9. And breathing out 9. 9. 9. Now for our final breath, we're going to breathe in very deeply, really pulling in that breath from the feet all the way to the top of the head, filling the stomach. And then when I say, we will all release in a big release together. Last breath here, 9. And 9. Great work, everyone. Wonderful work. Let's begin now to fully resonate and relax into this moment. Releasing and allowing respite from this day. Releasing and allowing respite from expectations and concerns, and releasing the worries about support or not being supported enough. Let us come into witnessing for our thoughts and our feelings, and witness how our energy has shifted throughout the day. The more we see and the more we witness, the more we allow for our perceptions to shift and change and move, so that we recognize that which doesn't serve and hold fast to our core, to our very center. We're bringing relaxation into the body now, into the limbs, into the torso, into the head and the neck. relaxing as well our eyes, our ears, our mouths, our noses, and our hands. Relaxing and no longer worrying or contemplating the inputs of the day. We are creating a symbiosis of the self. It is just us. We are the input and we are the output. We breathe now into the spinal cord, feeling the energy flow up as we breathe in, feeling the energy flow down as we breathe out. Up and down our spinal cord, opening up the pathways of our thoughts, our reflections, and our feelings as we are now fully tuning in to self. We are unblocking the path of our spinal cord, releasing uncertainty, knowing that we don't have to be right or wrong. We can just exist as we are. We're allowing the mind to move through the body and move through our nerves. And as we are doing so, and as we are moving deeper into a release of that which doesn't serve, we are beginning now to feel these nerves and feel our spine begin to buzz with awareness. These nerves buzzing, as they are the roots and the branches of our consciousness, all now awakening, blending the paths of dream and wakefulness, conscious and unconscious, and drawing us ever closer to a fully realized self. In this place between dream and wakefulness, let us now let the mind become like the sky, thoughts as clouds, swirling, shifting, parting. And the clouds are clearing, instead of fogging us up, enveloping us with a full bodied feeling of coziness, of contentment, and of peace. And so our mind is now the sky itself. It is without boundaries. It is the place where the sun and the moon cross paths. It is the place of big picture thinking. Our sky mind is a celestial atmosphere, growing and shifting, consciousness rising and expanding, rising and expanding, opening and opening and opening. Our spine is the lightning rod of our consciousness, the weather vane, letting in the winds and the opening of the sky be transmuted to our entire bodies now, as we are held by the clouds. We are exalted and we are brilliant. And as we are in this sky and body, celestial consciousness, we are reminded to always listen, to listen to the signs and the symbols, the thoughts, the memories, the sounds, the movements that come up for us, and incline towards that which inclines towards us, opening ourselves to the question, what grace is stored within me? We are listening to the self, listening to our needs, listening to our gut instincts, and bringing in a love to our beliefs about our work, about our life, about our growth on this planet. Remembering to do what we love because we love it, and releasing circular thinking in favor of self-inclined thinking. Our consciousness expands further now as we ourselves and we are embodiment of love and compassion and kindness. We are filled with love that goes through multiple dimensions and platforms, varieties of experience and expression as we are expanding. We lose ourselves now to the silence of our minds, our fully expanded sky minds, as we allow ourselves to incline closer to that compassion, to that love, to that peace, and to that kindness. We dip into the quietude of a trance-like, dreamlike state, taking this time for ourselves always, as I will now count down from 10. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. And now we'll begin to return. I will count down or count up this time from 1 to 5. And when we hit 5, we will be back in this time and in this place, counting upwards. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Welcoming back, everyone. Let's go ahead and stop the music. We'll turn off the recording.